Beneath the endless blue of the sea, where sunlight fades and shadows stretch like an eternal stage, lie ruins that seem to whisper of forgotten worlds. Broken stones rest in careful stacks. Stairways appear to lead down into a drowned plaza, and walls draped in seaweed still hold the silent memory of lives once lived. For thousands of years, people have passed down stories of cities swallowed by the ocean, of colossal pyramids rising from the seafloor, and of a legendary continent called Atlantis, sometimes described as the realm of gods, other times as the work of visitors from beyond the stars. In ancient Greece, the philosopher Plato spoke of it as a radiant city destroyed in a single catastrophic night. Medieval sailors told of strange lights rising from the depths, and today underwater archaeologists still debate whether these structures were the creations of early humankind, or evidence that our ancestors were guided by teachers from the sky. Tonight, we drift into those forgotten depths, where the line between myth and history dissolves into mystery. Welcome to Deformed History. If you're drawn to stories like these, the ones that live in the shadows between what we see and what was made to disappear, feel free to like and subscribe only if it feels right. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you right now? I love seeing our little map of watchers light up around the world. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the ocean at night. The waves are dark. The surface reflects nothing but a pale silver glow from the moon. And below that glimmer stretches an abyss so vast it feels endless. Scientists often remind us that more than 70% of our planet is covered by water, yet we have mapped only a small fraction of it. In truth, humankind knows more about the distant surface of the moon than about the depths of the seas at our own doorstep. Beneath those shifting waves lies not only the world of fish and coral, but also the memory of Earth itself, memories carved into stone, scattered across the seabed like broken lines of an unread book. The ocean is not only a cradle of life, it is a graveyard of civilizations. For as long as there have been sailors, there have been whispers of cities below the waves. Fishermen pulling up nets sometimes spoke of shapes on the seafloor that looked too orderly, like walls or pavements. Ancient legends described islands that once thrived with people before vanishing beneath storms and floods. The Greeks gave the most famous of these tales a name, Atlantis, a radiant land destroyed in a single night and day of misfortune. But the story of drowned worlds is not unique to Greece. In India, the Mahabharata, an epic poem, speaks of Dwarka, a city beloved by a god, lost to the ocean. In South America, the Andean peoples tell of a sacred lake that swallowed temples of gold. And in Japan, divers discovered structures beneath the waves that resemble steps and plazas, as if an entire neighborhood had been frozen underwater. These stories echo one another across continents, separated by languages and centuries, yet all pointing to a shared fear that the sea can take everything and sometimes return nothing but silence. During the last ice age, much of the world's water was locked away in glaciers. Great sheets of ice covered North America and Europe, pressing the land under a weight measured in miles. Sea levels then were lower, and the coastlines stretched farther out. Human beings, scattered in small groups, built their shelters, and perhaps even towns on shores that no longer exist today. When the climate warmed, the ice melted, and the ocean rose. Bit by bit, the tide crept inland, drowning valleys, forests, and settlements. The process was gradual on a human scale, yet on the timeline of civilizations it was sudden, erasing millions of square miles of habitable land. Imagine living in a village and noticing year by year that the shore moved closer, the water claiming fields where crops once grew. Generations may have tried to adapt, but eventually the sea took all. What was built by hands and stone was swallowed, hidden beneath waves that still cover it today. This geological truth offers one explanation for why so many myths recall a golden age swallowed by water. And yet, not all of these stories are easily explained by geology. Some ruins discovered underwater are too precise, too vast, and too anomalous to dismiss as mere coincidence of rock and tide. Divers report roads paved with flat blocks, arranged in straight lines stretching into the murk. Walls rise at right angles, terraces descend in steps too neat to be shaped by accident. When people see these structures, they do not only see stone, they see intention. That sense of intention raises questions larger than science has been able to settle. Were these really cities? Did ancient civilizations far older than we admit exist before the known empires? Or, as some believe, did knowledge arrive from beyond, gifted or imposed by visitors not of this earth? Legends of strangers descending from the sky are common across cultures. To ancient ears, such tales were woven with the language of gods and spirits. To modern listeners, they sometimes sound eerily similar to descriptions of beings from other worlds. The question is not whether people told these stories, and they certainly did, but whether they were allegory, memory, or both. Was Atlantis, for example, a parable Plato invented to caution against pride and corruption? Or was it an echo of something real, preserved through generations of oral tradition before it reached his pen? In a similar way, when Japanese fishermen first saw the submerged monument off Yonaguni in the 1980s, did they discover nature's trick or a stairway carved by forgotten hands? The debate remains unresolved, but the mystery lingers. Standing on the shore today, one can hear the waves and imagine what lies hidden below. It is not hard to picture plazas where children once played, now covered by coral, or statues erected to honor deities, their faces blurred by centuries of sand, or streets where merchants sold goods under the sun, now haunted only by fish. These visions are not only romantic, they are supported by fragments of reality. Archaeologists in India have dredged pottery and tools from waters where no city should have been. In the Mediterranean, divers explore harbors that once served bustling ports of Rome and Greece, now submerged by tectonic shifts and rising seas. In the Caribbean, pilots flying over shallow reefs have reported geometric patterns beneath the surface, squares and lines that resemble city blocks. Evidence piles up, yet never quite resolves the enigma. If these were merely stories, perhaps we could dismiss them. But stories persist when they strike a chord with something deeper. The ocean has always been more than a body of water. It is a threshold, a mirror of our fears and hopes, a place where human imagination projects both paradise and apocalypse. To gaze into the sea is to gaze into possibility, the possibility that we are not the first to walk these lands, not the first to build, not the first to dream of greatness. Beneath the waves may lie proof of civilizations erased, their memory preserved only in myth. Or perhaps what waits there is stranger still, a reminder that the world we inherit is only a chapter in a much longer story written in stone, water, and silence. Tonight, we begin our descent into that longer story. As we travel through these accounts, from Greek philosophy to Caribbean ruins, from Japanese legends to Indian temples, we will drift between evidence and imagination. Each step deeper takes us closer to a truth that may never be final, but that continues to shape our curiosity. The ocean, vast and indifferent, holds its secrets with patience, and we, fragile creatures on its shore, can only listen, wonder, and wait. In the heart of ancient Athens, nearly 24 centuries ago, a philosopher named Plato sat down to write a story. His words were not intended as entertainment alone. They were part of a dialogue, a kind of teaching conversation that blended myth, history, and moral lesson. Two of his works, Timaeus and Critias, have since become the fountainhead of one of the most enduring legends humanity has ever known. It is within these pages that Atlantis first appears, a land so radiant and advanced that it seemed both a gift of the gods and a cautionary tale of their wrath. To understand how the myth grew, one must step into the atmosphere of Plato's Athens, a city that had survived wars, political upheaval, and the constant questioning of what it meant to live wisely. Plato claimed that the story of Atlantis was not his invention, but an account passed down through Egyptian priests and relayed to the Greek statesman Solon. Whether or not this chain of transmission ever truly existed, the idea gave the tale a sense of ancient authority, as though it had been whispered across generations before reaching his pen. According to the dialogue, Atlantis was once a mighty island situated beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar, that narrow passage between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic Ocean. Beyond those waters, Plato said, lay a continent-like land, larger than Libya and Asia combined, rich with resources, and blessed with a people who had mastered both the arts of agriculture and the science of architecture. The description is vivid, almost cinematic. The city of Atlantis was built in concentric circles, alternating rings of land and water connected by bridges and canals. At the very center stood a temple to Poseidon, god of the sea, said to be adorned with silver walls, golden pinnacles, and statues so immense that they brushed the clouds. Surrounding this sacred heart were palaces, gardens, and training grounds. Ships moved easily through the waterways, bringing goods from distant regions. The Atlanteans were portrayed as masters of both engineering and governance. They cultivated fertile plains, harnessed the power of rivers, and organized themselves into 10 kingdoms, each ruled by a son of Poseidon. Their society, in Plato's account, seemed at once divine and human, combining abundance of resources with order of law. Yet the brilliance of the description is shadowed by a warning. Plato tells us that over time, the Atlanteans fell victim to greed and ambition. They began to hunger for conquest beyond their island, turning their gaze toward Athens and the lands of the Mediterranean. This hubris, the ancient Greek word for excessive pride that defies the balance of nature and the gods, became their undoing. The tale reaches its climax with divine punishment, earthquakes and floods, fire and collapse. In a single day and night, the mighty island sank beneath the waves, leaving nothing but memory and rumor. For Plato's audience, the message was clear. Atlantis was a mirror held up to Athens itself, a reminder that even the greatest city could fall if it strayed from justice and moderation. Still, listeners through the centuries have heard something else in the story. The details are too rich, too specific, to dismiss entirely as allegory. Why describe walls of black, white, and red stone if not drawn from some memory of volcanic islands? Why mention elephants roaming the island unless there was once a land where such creatures lived? Why place Atlantis beyond the familiar seas, in the wide Atlantic, if not to hint at lands unknown to the Greeks? Some argue that Plato used the framework of myth to encode fragments of older history, perhaps tales of cataclysm passed down from survivors of floods at the end of the Ice Age. Others suggest that he tapped into a cultural memory that existed long before writing, when people watched rising waters consume their homes and reimagined the disaster as the anger of gods. Over the centuries, the image of Atlantis grew far beyond Plato's modest dialogues. Medieval scholars debated whether it had been real, explorers dreamed of finding its shores, and later writers turned it into a symbol of utopia lost. But to return to Plato's own words is to sense the peculiar mixture he achieved. His Atlantis is not purely mythical, like Olympus, the mountain home of gods, nor purely historical like Athens. It stands in between, half real and half dream, an invitation to question the limits of memory and the fragility of civilizations. To read his account is to stand at the threshold of imagination and reality, with one foot in philosophy and the other in the restless ocean. One can imagine Plato speaking the story aloud to his students, the firelight flickering against the walls, the city outside humming with daily life. His voice, calm but insistent, would remind them that human achievement is always temporary. A city may rise to greatness, but pride can bring ruin swifter than any enemy. Yet woven within the warning is also a seduction. Atlantis was more than a moral tale. It was a vision of what might be possible. Cities built with canals like veins of water, temples adorned with shining metal, knowledge of agriculture and navigation that seemed far ahead of its time. The story ignited both fear and longing. Fear of collapse, longing for lost perfection. That tension continues to shape how we think of Atlantis today. Was it a parable, or was it history disguised? If Plato invented it whole, then he created one of the most persuasive myths of all time. If he preserved fragments of truth, then Atlantis may represent the faint echo of a civilization we have yet to rediscover. Either way, his words transformed the ocean from a simple expanse of water into a stage where the drama of human destiny unfolds. The waves became not only barriers to travel, but veils hiding secrets. To hear the story even now is to feel that perhaps, just perhaps, something lies waiting beneath the surf, waiting for eyes to see what Plato's imagination first revealed. And so, the philosopher's tale crosses centuries to reach us. Whether it is moral lesson, distant memory, or both, it has set countless minds wandering toward the horizon, searching for the gleam of towers that may never have existed, or that may still rest, silent and forgotten, beneath the sea. Picture the sea on a calm day, sunlight sparkling on the waves, gulls wheeling overhead, the horizon stretching so far it feels like the edge of the world. To the ancient Greeks, this beauty carried a hidden tension, for the sea was never merely calm water. It was a realm ruled by a god, Poseidon, brother of Zeus, lord of earthquakes, storms, and horses. His trident could churn the ocean into fury, topple walls, or crack open the earth itself. For Plato's readers, the presence of Poseidon at the heart of Atlantis was no accident. The god of the sea was both protector and destroyer, a divine force who could bestow greatness or erase it in a heartbeat. In the story, Poseidon fell in love with a mortal woman named Cleito. To protect her, he built a palace on a hill, surrounded by concentric circles of land and water. This image of rings, like ripples spreading from a stone dropped into a pond, was not only symbolic but also practical. The channels created harbors, the walls offered defense, and the pattern mirrored the natural cycles of tide and storm. From their union came 10 sons, twins paired like reflections of balance and duality. The eldest, Atlas, gave his name to the island itself, while his brothers ruled the other districts. The divine bloodline linked Atlantis not only to earthly kingship, but also to the restless ocean that birthed and circled it. To imagine Poseidon is to imagine a god of contradictions. He was revered as the source of fertility, the giver of springs and rivers, yet also feared as the bringer of quakes and floods. His moods were as changeable as the sea. Sailors prayed to him before journeys, hoping for favor, while entire cities built temples to his name, desperate to avoid his anger. If any deity embodied both the promise of abundance and the threat of ruin, it was he. And so the myth of Atlantis becomes entwined with the character of Poseidon himself. The city's splendor, its palaces of gleaming metal, its fields of rich grain, its stables filled with horses, all of it reflected the god's generosity. But the city's destruction, sudden and final, mirrored his rage. Legends of gods taking mortal lovers are common across cultures, yet the tale of Cleito has a peculiar resonance. Some scholars see in it an allegory for an outsider arriving with superior knowledge, uniting with local people, and founding a dynasty. To those who favor the ancient astronaut theory, Poseidon is imagined not as a divine figure, but as a traveler from beyond, bringing with him the gifts of engineering and law. The temple built in his honor, adorned with gold and silver, might be seen as memory distorted over centuries, an echo of unfamiliar technology mistaken for the radiance of divinity. For the people of Atlantis, however, Poseidon was no abstraction. He was the living pulse of their city, a presence inscribed into every stone. The myth tells us that the Atlanteans flourished for generations under this divine order. They tilled fertile fields irrigated by ingenious canals, fields so rich that harvests could feed armies and still fill granaries. They mined metals unknown to other lands, blending them into alloys that glowed with strange brilliance. They built walls from black, white, and red stone, their colors shining in the sun, and within those walls stood statues of such magnitude that even centuries later the description makes us pause. Imagine a figure of bronze so vast that a man on horseback would appear as a child at its feet. Imagine temples whose roofs were plated with metal, gleaming like mirrors to the sky. Such visions straddle the line between possibility and dream, yet they remind us of the awe that great monuments inspire, whether raised by gods, humans, or both. But grandeur invites ambition, and ambition calls forth judgment. The Atlanteans, emboldened by their wealth and power, began to push outward. They sought to conquer beyond their seas, to bring Athens and other lands under their control. This thirst for domination, according to the myth, marked the beginning of their downfall. For the Greeks, the story carried a warning that even the most favored people, even those descended from gods, could fall when pride eclipsed humility. Poseidon, once their benefactor, turned into their judge. The very element that had nurtured them, the sea, rose up as executioner. It is here that myth and geology intertwine in haunting ways. Earthquakes and floods are not fantasy. They are forces that have shaped human history time and again. The Greeks, living in a land often shaken by tremors, knew well how sudden the earth could betray them. Volcanic eruptions could darken the sky. Tidal waves could erase villages in moments. To wrap these natural disasters in the form of Poseidon was to give them meaning, to see chaos as the will of a god. Atlantis, in this sense, was not only a story of a lost city, but a meditation on the fragility of human achievement. A temple plated in gold means nothing if the ground beneath it splits apart. And yet, for those who dream beyond allegory, the figure of Poseidon continues to intrigue. If he was not a god in the literal sense, could he have been something else? A leader remembered as divine, or a visitor whose abilities surpassed those of ordinary men? The trident he carried, symbol of his rule, could be imagined as a tool, a device of unknown function. The quakes and floods attributed to him might hint at knowledge of natural forces, or even technologies lost to time. Such speculation, while unprovable, keeps the legend alive, allowing each generation to find in Poseidon a reflection of its own imagination. As we listen to the waves crash against the shore today, we can almost feel the dual nature of the sea god. The ocean nurtures life, connects continents, feeds billions, but it also conceals, devours, and destroys. The people of Atlantis built their world under the gaze of Poseidon, and in the end, they fell to the same power that had raised them. Whether we see this as divine justice, geological inevitability, or cosmic intervention, the story lingers. Atlantis was both a gift and a warning, a city of splendor born from love and drowned by wrath. And in that paradox, the image of Poseidon endures, trident poised above the waters, reminding us that the boundary between creation and destruction is as thin and shifting as the tide itself. Imagine a city at the height of its power. The streets are alive with merchants and farmers, priests and scholars, children laughing as they run across wide plazas. The temples gleam in the sunlight, their walls plated with metals that catch the eye like fire. Ships slide in and out of harbors, carrying goods across the known world. Fields of grain ripple like waves of gold, while stables echo with the sound of horses, a sacred animal to the people who honored Poseidon. It is a vision of order and prosperity, a city so magnificent it seemed untouchable. And yet, according to Plato, Atlantis met its end not slowly, not after centuries of decline, but in a single day and night of horror. The account is stark in its brevity, almost as if words themselves could not capture the scale of the calamity. The earth shook with violent tremors, tearing open the ground, collapsing walls and towers. Storms howled across the sky, winds tearing roofs from buildings. The sea, once a gentle moat circling the city, turned into a wall of fury. Waves surged over the canals and plazas, sweeping away markets, homes, and temples in moments. Fires raged, perhaps from volcanic eruptions or collapsing structures, filling the air with smoke. Within hours, the island that had stood as the jewel of the ocean was gone, swallowed whole by the depths, leaving only ripples on the surface. What had taken generations to build vanished in a single night. For the Greeks, this destruction was not merely disaster, but justice. To them, the gods punished excess and arrogance. Hubris, that ancient word for pride that defies the order of the cosmos, was believed to invite divine correction. In the tale, Atlantis had turned from moderation to greed, from wisdom to conquest. Their armies had marched across foreign lands, their leaders had forgotten humility, and so the sea rose to reclaim what it had once given. The suddenness of the catastrophe was part of the lesson. No matter how strong a people may seem, fate can overturn their fortunes in the blink of an eye. Yet one cannot help but imagine what it must have felt like for the people living through that moment. Legends often speak from the perspective of gods or nations, but behind the myth are human lives. Picture a family huddled together as tremors shake the ground beneath their feet, watching in terror as the ocean surges toward them. Picture sailors in the harbor struggling to cut their anchors as towering waves descend upon their ships. Picture priests carrying sacred relics through the smoke, searching for high ground that would never be high enough. The myth compresses their agony into a sentence. But the human reality would have been chaos, fear, and grief beyond measure. The idea of sudden catastrophe resonates with something deep in human memory. Flood myths exist on nearly every continent, from the story of Noah in the Hebrew Bible to the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia, from Native American legends of great waves to the Hindu accounts of Manu saved from a flood by a divine fish. These stories are not identical, but they share a theme. Water as both destroyer and cleanser, wiping away old worlds to make room for the new. Some anthropologists suggest these tales may be rooted in real events, memories of tsunamis, rising seas, or massive storms passed down through generations until they became myth. Atlantis, then, may be one of many echoes of humanity's encounter with water's unforgiving power. Modern geology offers its own explanations. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and tsunamis are capable of reshaping coastlines overnight. The eruption of Thera, now called Santorini, around 1600 BCE, devastated the Minoan civilization and may have inspired parts of the Atlantis legend. When Krakatoa erupted in 1883, entire villages disappeared beneath waves taller than houses, and the sound of the explosion traveled across oceans. Imagine an event of such magnitude striking an island city. The destruction would indeed be sudden, complete, and unforgettable. To Plato's audience, the merging of natural disaster with divine punishment gave meaning to chaos. But to modern readers, it also raises the possibility that behind the myth lies a fragment of geological truth. And yet, there is another layer that keeps the imagination restless. The idea that an advanced civilization could vanish so quickly suggests not only fragility, but also mystery. If Atlantis truly existed, what knowledge did it take with it to the bottom of the sea? Were its technologies, metals, or arts more sophisticated than we admit for ancient times? Did survivors scatter to other lands, carrying fragments of wisdom that seeded later cultures? Some theorists suggest that the sudden loss of Atlantis explains why great civilizations like Egypt or the Maya seem to appear with advanced skills already in hand. Perhaps they were inheritors of refugees from a drowned world. The story of a catastrophe in a single night thus becomes not only a warning, but also a doorway to speculation about the hidden past of humanity. It is worth pausing to reflect on the psychological weight of such a narrative. Human beings live with the illusion of permanence. We build houses, cities, monuments, believing they will stand for centuries. But nature does not share our illusions. An earthquake can reduce stone to rubble in minutes. A volcano can bury towns under ash. A wave can erase coastlines without regard for who built them. Plato's tale reminds us that civilizations are not eternal. They are as vulnerable as any single life, subject to forces beyond their control. Whether we see Atlantis as history, parable, or dream, its sudden destruction speaks to this universal truth. Everything we build rests on fragile ground, and still, the mystery endures. If Atlantis sank in a single night, where did it go? Could traces of it remain beneath layers of silt and coral, waiting for divers or machines to uncover them? Explorers have searched for centuries, proposing locations from the Mediterranean to the Caribbean, from the Azores to Antarctica. None of the theories have silenced the debate. Perhaps the island lies beyond our reach, or perhaps it never existed at all. But the image of a city swallowed whole in one night continues to haunt us, because it embodies both fear and fascination. It is the nightmare of losing everything, and the allure of a secret world still hidden in the deep. Tonight, as waves crash against the shore and the tide pulls steadily in and out, we might hear in that rhythm an ancient echo. A city once stood proud, then vanished into silence. Its fate, told in a few sentences, has echoed across millennia, reminding us of the fragile line between greatness and oblivion. Atlantis fell in a single night, and in that fall, it became immortal in memory. The ocean that we know today was not always as it appears. If you could step back in time 20,000 years, the world would feel both familiar and alien. Vast sheets of ice, some more than 2 miles thick, sprawled across North America and northern Europe, pressing down the land with a weight so immense it reshaped entire continents. Glaciers carved valleys, gouged out lakes, and locked away so much water that sea level stood hundreds of feet lower than they do now. Where we see coastlines today, our ancestors would have seen plains, forests, and rivers. The ocean's edge lay far beyond its modern reach, and human communities settled on lands now buried beneath waves. As the Ice Age drew to a close, the climate began to shift. Temperatures warmed, slowly at first, then with sudden bursts of change. Ice melted, releasing torrents of water back into the sea. The great white sheets that had covered half the northern hemisphere shrank year after year, and the oceans rose in response. What we call the Holocene epoch, the warm period we still live in, began with a global transformation of coastlines. Lowlands vanished, deltas drowned, and islands broke away from mainlands. Over thousands of years, nearly 10 million square miles of land disappeared under rising seas, an area roughly equal to the size of Europe and China combined. Imagine the experience for the people who lived through it. They were hunters and gatherers, fishers and early farmers, moving along the fertile edges of rivers and coasts. Each generation may have noticed only subtle changes. A shoreline creeping inland, marshes spreading where there had once been fields, the sea claiming a little more ground each year. But over centuries, entire homelands vanished. Villages were abandoned as waves overtook them. Sacred sites were lost, temples and gathering places swallowed whole. To those who survived, the memory of what had been consumed by water must have lingered, retold in stories that grew into myths of floods and drowned lands. These were not just legends of punishment. They were echoes of real upheaval. One striking example lies in Doggerland, the stretch of land that once connected Britain to continental Europe. Today it lies beneath the North Sea, but during the Ice Age it was a vast plain where rivers wound through grasslands rich with deer and mammoth. Archaeologists have dredged up tools, bones, and traces of settlements from its submerged floor, evidence of people who lived and thrived there. Around 8,000 years ago, rising seas and a catastrophic tsunami finished the work, drowning Doggerland forever. What remains now is not a forgotten island like Atlantis, but a sunken continent, a reminder that entire ways of life can vanish beneath water. Elsewhere, the Black Sea tells a similar tale. Geologists believe that at the end of the Ice Age, as the Mediterranean rose, water surged through the Bosporus Strait in a flood so violent it raised the sea level by hundreds of feet. Coastlines were swallowed in weeks, if not days. Farmers who had tended the fertile shores fled inland, carrying with them the story of a great deluge. Some scholars have even suggested that this event could lie behind the biblical account of Noah's flood, a myth that has parallels in Mesopotamian and Sumerian traditions. Whether or not this is true, the pattern is clear. When seas rise suddenly, memory takes the shape of legend. These geological truths help explain why flood myths appear in nearly every culture. The ancient Mesopotamians spoke of Gilgamesh seeking wisdom after a great inundation. The Hindus described Manu saved by a divine fish as waters consumed the world. Native peoples of the Americas told of massive waves that reset the order of the earth. And Plato's story of Atlantis, though couched in philosophy, fits neatly into this chorus. It is not difficult to imagine that his tale was inspired, at least in part, by lingering memories of real lands lost to the ocean. Myths preserve the trauma of survival, encoding it in divine judgment or heroic rescue. Yet there remains a mystery. Some ruins discovered beneath shallow seas appear too deliberate, too architectural, to dismiss as mere natural formations. In places like the Caribbean, divers speak of roads paved with stone blocks, lines and angles too precise to be accidents of geology. Off the coast of India, sonar scans have revealed what looks like entire complexes of buildings buried under silt. If these were once coastal settlements drowned by post-Ice Age floods, then human history may be older and more complex than our textbooks admit. Instead of civilizations arising suddenly a few thousand years ago, perhaps there were earlier chapters erased by the sea, remembered only as fragments in myth. This possibility fuels the fascination with Atlantis and similar legends. The idea that advanced societies could have flourished on lands now underwater gives new weight to the myths of sudden catastrophe. Perhaps the gods of flood stories were not merely symbols of nature's wrath, but personifications of real events. Perhaps the memory of earthquakes and tidal waves was passed down in language of divine punishment, because people had no other words for forces so overwhelming. And perhaps survivors, scattered to new lands, carried fragments of culture that helped seed later civilizations. The rise of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent, the sudden sophistication of the Maya, the architectural genius of Egypt, all these might bear faint traces of knowledge salvaged from drowned ancestors. The Ice Age, then, is not only a chapter in geology but a hidden stage in human history. It set the conditions for myth, memory, and speculation. It turned coasts into seabeds and villages into ruins no one could visit for thousands of years. The people who lived through its end carried the weight of loss, turning grief into story. And in those stories we may glimpse the outlines of what truly happened. A world remade by rising waters, leaving behind legends of lands like Atlantis. Tonight, as waves lap at the shorelines we now call stable, it is worth remembering that they, too, are temporary. The sea that once swallowed Doggerland and flooded the Black Sea will continue its slow advance, reshaping our future as surely as it shaped the past. The myths of our ancestors remind us not only of what was lost, but also of what endures. The resilience of memory, the stubborn hope that even when a city sinks, its story will float to the surface and live on. Far out in the turquoise waters of the Bahamas, where the sea seems to glow with its own light, there lies a curious formation that has stirred debate for more than half a century. Divers call it the Bimini Road, though to some it is not a road at all, but the trace of something greater, a wall, a pier, or perhaps the outline of a forgotten city. It rests in shallow water, only a few meters below the surface, where curious swimmers can glide across it and see the stones stretching out like a path into the deep. For believers in lost civilizations, the Bimini Road is a tantalizing clue, a possible fragment of Atlantis itself. For skeptics, it is nothing more than nature arranging limestone blocks in ways that mimic human order. Between these two views lies the mystery that has refused to settle. The discovery came in 1968 when a team of divers noticed a strange line of stones off the coast of North Bimini Island. They were large, flat, and rectangular, laid side by side like paving slabs on a street. Some measured as much as 13 feet long. From above, the formation looked almost like a causeway, curving gently and then vanishing into the sand. News of the find spread quickly, and in that era, a time when fascination with Atlantis had surged thanks to popular books and television, speculation grew wild. Was this the first physical proof of Plato's tale? A drowned harbor road leading into the heart of a sunken city? The stones themselves tell a more complicated story. They are composed of beach rock, a type of limestone formed when sand and shells are cemented together by minerals in seawater. Geologists point out that such slabs often fracture along straight lines, creating shapes that mimic masonry. Waves can move and align them, producing patterns that look almost deliberate. To many scientists, the Bimini Road is simply geology playing tricks on the human eye. But divers who swim along its length insist that the blocks are too neatly fitted, too purposefully arranged. Some stones even appear to rest atop others, like layers of construction. And in the gaps, smaller stones seem to have been wedged in, as if by the hands of builders seeking balance. This clash of interpretations has fueled decades of argument. Photographs of the site show both randomness and order, depending on the angle. Some explorers claim to see right-angled corners and deliberate shaping. Others see nothing but erosion and coincidence. What makes the debate compelling is not just the stones themselves, but the stories that surround them. Edgar Cayce, the famous American clairvoyant, once predicted that evidence of Atlantis would rise near Bimini between 1968 and 1969. When the road was found during those very years, believers seized upon it as prophecy fulfilled. Skeptics dismissed this as retrofitted coincidence, yet the timing added a layer of intrigue that lingers to this day. Imagine for a moment walking along that submerged path. The water is warm, sunlight dances across the sand, and beneath you lies a line of stone blocks stretching into mystery. Each slab is worn, its edges softened by time and tide. Fish dart in and out of the cracks, and corals cling to the surfaces. It feels both natural and unnatural at once, like stumbling across the remains of an ancient street where no city should exist. Whether nature or human, the impression is the same. You are looking at something that seems to belong to another age. The Bimini Road has inspired more than speculation about Atlantis. Some suggest it may be the remains of a port or breakwater used by ancient mariners. Others think it could be the foundation of a ceremonial site, its blocks once supporting wooden structures long since rotted away. A few even propose it is part of a vast system of submerged ruins stretching across the Caribbean, a network of lost cities buried when the seas rose at the end of the Ice Age. These ideas often outpace the available evidence, but they reveal the hunger we carry for connecting myth to reality. Every culture longs for proof that its legends hold a kernel of truth, and the Bimini Road seems to whisper that possibility. What complicates the picture is how little we truly know about seafaring in prehistoric times. Conventional history places advanced navigation thousands of years later, with Phoenicians, Greeks, and Polynesians. But the discovery of ancient artifacts in unexpected places, copper from the Old World turning up in the Americas, for example, raises questions about whether early peoples traveled farther and traded more widely than we assume. If that is the case, structures like the Bimini Road might hint at forgotten chapters of human exploration, when coastlines now lost to the sea hosted harbors and settlements. And so the Bimini Road becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the stones beneath the waves, but also the desires of those who gaze upon them. To scientists, it reflects the beauty of natural processes, the power of geology to mimic art. To seekers of Atlantis, it reflects hope, that somewhere, evidence waits to confirm the old story of a drowned empire. To casual divers, it reflects wonder itself, the joy of finding order in the chaos of the sea. The stones remain silent, offering no final answer, leaving us to project our questions onto them. Perhaps this is why the Bimini Road continues to captivate. It may be no more than fractured limestone, yet it has become a symbol of possibility. It reminds us that the line between natural and human creation is not always clear, that the past holds secrets we cannot easily classify. And it reminds us, too, of the power of imagination, how a row of stones can conjure visions of temples, harbors, and cities long gone. Whether Atlantis lies here or nowhere at all, the mystery of the Bimini Road ensures that the legend endures, etched not in marble or myth alone, but in the shifting sands of the sea. Off the western tip of Cuba, where the Gulf of Mexico opens into the deep waters of the Caribbean, lies a stretch of sea that has sparked one of the most haunting mysteries of modern exploration. In the year 2000, a team of researchers working with sonar equipment began mapping the seabed near the Pinar del Rio province. Their goal was routine: to survey the ocean floor for geological features and resources. But what the instruments revealed was anything but ordinary. At a depth of more than 2,000 feet, the sonar returned images of structures that looked strikingly like the remains of a city. Pyramids, roads, and even what appeared to be plazas laid out in deliberate order. For a moment, The dream of Atlantis seemed to shimmer just beyond the reach of divers' hands. The discovery was credited to Paulina Zalitsky, a marine engineer leading the survey. Her equipment traced outlines that suggested massive stone blocks arranged in geometric patterns, some stacked in ways that resembled terraces or steps. The images were grainy, filtered through the distortions of deep water, but they ignited imaginations around the world. Could a lost city really rest beneath the Cuban Sea, hidden for millennia? Skeptics pointed out that sonar can produce misleading results, turning natural formations into illusions of architecture. But others saw in the scans the unmistakable signature of design. The debate began almost immediately, drawing in archaeologists, geologists, and dreamers alike. At a depth of half a mile, direct exploration is far from easy. Human divers cannot descend so far without specialized equipment, and remotely operated vehicles face the challenge of murky water and strong currents. Still, reports trickled out of what was seen. Massive blocks as large as 8 feet by 10 feet, some apparently carved or smoothed, arranged in ways that suggested walls or foundations. One formation looked like a pyramid rising in tiers, another like a boulevard lined with stone. Taken together, the images resembled the skeleton of an ancient metropolis, drowned and preserved in silence. The scale of it was staggering. If these were truly man-made, they would dwarf many known ancient cities, suggesting a culture with engineering far beyond what history records for the region. The question then arises, how could such a city have ended up 2,000 feet underwater? Geological history offers one possibility. At the end of the Ice Age, melting glaciers raised sea levels by hundreds of feet. Entire coastlines disappeared, as we have seen with Doggerland and the Black Sea. But even that rise doesn't fully explain the Cuban site, which lies at a depth too great for gradual flooding alone. Some geologists propose that the seabed in this region may have dropped suddenly due to tectonic activity, an earthquake or collapse of the ocean floor that pulled land into the abyss. If so, then a thriving settlement could have been swallowed whole in a single catastrophic event, mirroring the very essence of Plato's account. Others see in the discovery a thread that ties the Americas more closely to Old World legends. If the Cuban ruins are real, they could suggest contact between cultures we never imagined intersecting. The pyramids, if confirmed, recall not only the stone temples of the Maya and Aztec, but also the monumental architecture of Egypt. Was this parallel evolution, humanity building similar structures in different places, or was there once a common source of knowledge now forgotten? The idea that an advanced seafaring civilization spread its influence across oceans, leaving pyramids in its wake, resonates strongly with the Atlantis myth. To many, the Cuban formations seemed like the missing link between speculation and proof. Skeptics, however, caution against leaping to conclusions. They note that underwater geology can produce blocky formations through natural processes. Basalt columns, coral growths, and fractured limestone can all mimic the appearance of architecture. Without direct excavation or clearer images, the ruins remain unverified. The deeper challenge is that funding for such exploration is scarce, and political complexities have kept many scientists from returning to the site. As a result, the mystery lingers in a fog of uncertainty, suspended between science and speculation. It is a reminder that the ocean keeps its secrets well, offering only glimpses that may never be resolved. Still, the allure persists. To imagine a city beneath the Cuban waters is to conjure visions of plazas where people once gathered, of pyramids rising against a tropical sky now long submerged. It is to imagine children playing in streets that now lie silent, merchants shouting in markets now filled with schools of fish, priests chanting in temples now cloaked in coral. The idea grips us because it speaks to the fragility of civilization. If such a place existed, it vanished not through slow decay, but through sudden erasure. Its story would mirror the fate of Atlantis, a civilization flourishing until the earth itself opened and swallowed it whole. The Cuban pyramids, whether real or illusion, stand as a symbol of our hunger to find meaning beneath the waves. They remind us that our knowledge of the seafloor is still in its infancy, and that what lies hidden may yet surprise us. They also highlight the way myths endure, because they echo possibilities grounded in human experience. People know that floods happen, that earthquakes strike, that the sea can devour entire coastlines. To imagine that it once took whole cities is not fantasy, but an extension of reality. Atlantis, Dwarka, Yonaguni, and now perhaps Cuba, all these names join in a chorus of places half remembered, half lost. As night falls over the Caribbean and the tide washes against the shore, one can stand on the beaches of Cuba and stare out at the horizon, wondering what lies beneath. Perhaps it is only stone shaped by time. Perhaps it is a ruin too old to fit within our histories. Either way, the silence of the deep holds its own power. It draws us into reflection, reminding us that the earth is vast, our knowledge small, and our past more mysterious than we dare to admit. And somewhere below, at the edge of certainty, the pyramids of Cuba wait, whether as nature's trick or as the bones of a forgotten civilization swallowed by the sea. There is a stretch of ocean in the western Atlantic where maps blur into legend, a place sailors have feared for centuries. Its borders are drawn loosely between Florida, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda, forming a triangle of mystery. Ships vanish, planes disappear, compasses spin wildly, and strange lights flicker over the waves. For some, these are accidents explained by storms, currents, or human error. For others, they are signs that something extraordinary lingers in the depths. This is the Bermuda Triangle, a name that carries both skepticism and fascination, a region where the ordinary laws of nature seem to falter. Among the many stories that swirl around the triangle, few are as tantalizing as the rumor of a pyramid deep beneath its waters. In the 1970s, reports surfaced of divers who claimed to have seen immense, glass-like structures resting on the seafloor. One account described a pyramid larger than any in Egypt, its smooth sides rising from the sand like the remains of an ancient temple. The idea spread quickly, carried by books and television, blending with the already rich lore of the triangle. If true, it would suggest not only a lost civilization, but also a technology that defied time, a monument hidden in the very heart of the ocean's most enigmatic zone. The notion of an underwater pyramid resonates because pyramids themselves are symbols of permanence. From Giza to Mesoamerica, they stand as markers of human ambition, structures meant to outlast generations. To imagine such a shape beneath the sea is to imagine permanence undone, endurance overturned by catastrophe. It is to picture a monument built to defy oblivion, now lying in silence where few can see it. Some describe the Bermuda Pyramid as made not of stone, but of a crystalline substance, as if it were crafted from material more advanced than the civilizations we know. This detail, though unverifiable, adds to its aura, suggesting not only mystery but mastery of forgotten science. Skeptics argue, of course, that these stories lack evidence. No verified photographs exist. No peer-reviewed studies confirm the pyramid's presence. The ocean floor in the region is deep and treacherous, and surveys by mainstream scientists have focused on other priorities. Yet the reports persist, echoing through magazines, documentaries, and whispered accounts from divers who insist they saw something unusual. Whether real or imagined, the Pyramid of Bermuda has become part of the Triangle's mythology, a symbol of what might lie hidden in the dark. To understand why the idea endures, one must recall the many disappearances that have marked the Bermuda Triangle. The most famous is Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers that vanished during a training mission in 1945. Radio transmissions captured their confusion. Compasses spinning, landmarks fading, pilots unable to find their way home. Search planes sent after them also disappeared, deepening the enigma. Other ships, from cargo freighters to private yachts, have been reported missing without trace, sometimes leaving behind intact meals and empty decks, as if crews had vanished into thin air. While science offers explanations, methane gas bubbles reducing buoyancy, sudden squalls overturning vessels, navigational errors magnified by magnetic anomalies. The sheer concentration of stories has given the region an almost supernatural reputation. Against this backdrop, the idea of a buried pyramid takes on symbolic weight. Could it be that the strange forces of the triangle are not natural at all, but linked to remnants of an ancient power source? Some fringe theories suggest the pyramid might generate energy, interfering with navigation, creating distortions in magnetic fields. Such speculation often strays far from evidence, yet it taps into a deep desire to connect anomalies with meaning. The triangle is already a stage for mystery. The pyramid gives it a prop, a hidden relic tying the present to a forgotten past. Imagine for a moment drifting down into that water, the light fading as you descend, the pressure building around you. Suddenly, out of the gloom, a shape emerges, smooth, angled, impossible in its geometry. It rises like a mountain, yet its sides are too precise, too deliberate. Fish swirl around its base, and corals cling to its edges, but the form beneath is unmistakable. A pyramid, silent and intact. Whether crystal or stone, it glows faintly in the filtered light, as if it still holds power. You float there in awe, suspended between disbelief and wonder, knowing you are gazing at something that should not exist. This is the vision that has haunted imaginations for decades, regardless of proof. And perhaps that is the true essence of the Bermuda Triangle, not answers but questions. The ocean covers so much of our world, and we have explored so little of it. Myths grow in the spaces we do not understand, filling silence with story. The Pyramid of Bermuda may never be found, or it may yet wait for technology capable of mapping the depths with clarity. Until then, it remains both presence and absence, both rumor and possibility. In that tension lies its power. Whether natural phenomenon or hidden monument, the Bermuda Triangle continues to remind us that the ocean is not fully ours. It resists control, swallows evidence, and offers back only glimpses of mystery. For every skeptic who dismisses the stories, there is a dreamer who listens to the waves and wonders what lies beneath. Between them stretches the same sea, indifferent to belief, but filled with echoes of ships, planes, and perhaps monuments lost. And in the center of it all, in imagination if not in fact, rises a pyramid, a symbol of what was or what could have been when the world was younger and civilizations played upon the edge of gods. When explorers first gazed upon the ruins of the Maya in the jungles of Central America, they were astonished. Towering pyramids pierced the canopy, stone temples stood weathered but proud, and intricate carvings told stories of kings, gods, and stars. It seemed almost impossible that such grandeur had risen in what Europeans had once imagined to be wilderness. For centuries, the Maya were seen as a mystery. Where had their knowledge come from? And why did their civilization seem to appear fully formed, with mathematics, astronomy, and architecture already advanced? These questions echo strangely when placed beside the whispers of lost cities beneath the sea, especially those reported near Cuba. Could there be a connection between the submerged pyramids of the Caribbean and the towering monuments of the Maya? Some think so, and their speculations reveal a fascinating intersection of myth and archaeology. The Maya flourished for more than 2,000 years, from around 2000 BCE until the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century. They built great city-states like Tikal, Palenque, and Chichen Itza, linked by trade networks that spanned hundreds of miles. Their achievements were remarkable. They developed a complex calendar that tracked celestial cycles with astonishing precision. They recorded their history in hieroglyphic texts, carved into stone or painted on codices. They erected pyramids aligned to the movements of the sun, so that shadows marked solstices and equinoxes with ritual significance. To stand before a Maya pyramid is to feel the weight of a civilization that understood the heavens as deeply as it shaped the earth. Yet the origins of their knowledge remain debated. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, where gradual development can be traced through early villages and step-by-step progress, the Maya seem to emerge with sudden sophistication. Where are their precursors, the simple beginnings from which such complexity should have grown? Archaeologists continue to uncover older sites, such as those in Guatemala's Mirador Basin. But the impression lingers that something catalyzed their rise. Legends among the Maya themselves speak of ancestors who came from across the sea, bringing with them knowledge of planting, building, and reading the stars. These myths, when placed beside the supposed underwater ruins near Cuba, fuel speculation that the Maya were heirs to a drowned civilization, perhaps even fragments of Atlantis. The idea may sound far-fetched, but consider the geography. Cuba lies not far from the Yucatan Peninsula, heartland of the Maya. If an advanced society had once thrived on lands now submerged, survivors could easily have reached the coasts of Mexico and Central America. They might have mingled with local peoples, passing on fragments of their knowledge. Over time, these fragments could seed the flowering of the Maya, who built upon them with their own genius. The pyramids of Cuba, if real, would then stand as ghostly ancestors of the pyramids of Tikal and Chichen Itza, echoes of a tradition stretching back further than we imagine. Of course, mainstream archaeology resists such leaps. The Maya achievements, scholars argue, can be explained by local development. They point to evidence of gradual growth, early farming villages, modest ceremonial platforms, increasing complexity over centuries. To them, the mystery is not one of origins, but of continuity, how the Maya sustained such achievements for so long and why their great cities were eventually abandoned. Yet even within this view, the allure of lost connections remains. Human imagination gravitates towards stories that link what is seen to what is hidden, that weave visible pyramids in the jungle with invisible ones beneath the sea. What deepens the fascination is the Mayas' relationship with water. They built cities near cenotes, natural sinkholes that they regarded as sacred entrances to the underworld. They told stories of floods and deluges, of worlds destroyed and reborn. Water, for them, was both giver and taker of life. To imagine their ancestors arriving from drowned lands is not entirely alien to their worldview. It resonates with their own cosmology of cycles and renewal. A civilization rising from the ocean's loss would fit neatly into their mythic imagination, blurring the line between memory and legend. Standing in the ruins of Chichen Itza, one sees the Pyramid of Kukulkan, also called El Castillo, rising 98 feet into the air. Its steps are steep, its symmetry striking. Twice a year, during the equinox, the sun casts shadows along its staircase that resemble the body of a serpent slithering down the temple, a spectacle that drew crowds in awe. Such precision did not emerge by chance. The Maya were astronomers of remarkable skill, mapping Venus, the sun, and the moon, with calculations rivaling modern accuracy. How did they learn to read the sky so well? Was it entirely their own discovery, or did they inherit fragments of an older science? The question cannot be answered with certainty, but it continues to haunt those who compare their monuments to those rumored beneath the waves. Imagine, then, that you are standing on the shores of Cuba at sunset, looking west toward the Yucatan. The sea before you hides stone blocks, perhaps plazas, perhaps pyramids. Beyond the horizon lies the jungle, where temples rise above trees. The connection feels tangible, as if the ocean is a veil separating two halves of one story. On one side, ruins submerged and silent. On the other, ruins rising towards the sky, still speaking through stone. Together they form a dialogue across time, a conversation between what was lost and what survived. Skeptics may dismiss this as coincidence, yet coincidences often spark deeper reflection. Even if the Cuban ruins prove natural, the very act of linking them to the Maya highlights a truth. Civilizations are not isolated. Ideas travel, myths migrate, and knowledge flows across boundaries of land and water. Whether by shipwrecked survivors, wandering traders, or imagination itself, the echo of one culture can resonate in another. The Maya, with their mastery of stone and star, stand as proof that human potential often exceeds the limits we expect. Whether they were guided by ancestors from the sea or by their own genius, their achievements shine across centuries. Tonight, as the stars rise over the Caribbean, one might imagine the Maya gazing at them centuries ago, calculating cycles, aligning temples, weaving myth with mathematics. Perhaps they, too, wondered about what lay beneath the waves, what worlds the ocean had swallowed before their time. Perhaps their pyramids were not only monuments to gods, but also memorials to memories of lands lost. The Cuban pyramids may never be proven real, but in the imagination they remain. Silent echoes that find their answer in the stones of the Maya, still standing in the jungle, still speaking to those who listen in wonder. At the southern edge of Japan's Ryukyu Islands, Near Yonaguni, the sea is both beautiful and treacherous. Its waters are clear, its currents strong, and beneath its waves lies one of the most debated discoveries of modern archaeology. In 1986, a diver exploring the area encountered something extraordinary. Massive stone terraces rising from the seafloor, steps carved into monumental platforms, flat surfaces and sharp angles that seemed more suited to a city square than to the randomness of geology. The site has since become famous as the Yonaguni Monument, a place where natural wonder and human speculation collide in equal measure. The structure sprawls across an area the size of several football fields. It features broad platforms, sweeping stairways, and vertical walls that rise nearly 25 meters high. From some angles, it resembles a stepped pyramid, like those built in Mesoamerica or Mesopotamia. From others, it looks like a citadel carved into the rock, complete with what appear to be plazas and avenues. Divers who visit describe the eerie sensation of swimming through a drowned city, where the silence of water cloaks shapes that feel achingly familiar. To drift across its ledges is to feel as though one has stumbled into the ruins of a forgotten world. Geologists offer a simpler explanation. They note that Yonaguni is composed of sandstone, a rock that fractures naturally along straight lines. Erosion from waves and currents can carve steps, corners, and platforms that mimic architecture. From this perspective, the monument is a masterpiece of nature, not humanity, a chance arrangement that teases the eye into seeing design where none exists. And indeed, nature does produce remarkable forms: basalt columns in Iceland, hexagonal pavements at the Giant's Causeway in Ireland, cliffs that look like fortresses but are only wind and stone. Why should the sea be any different? Yet some researchers, most notably Masaki Kimura, a Japanese marine geologist, insist that Yonaguni bears marks of human activity. Kimura has spent decades studying the site, mapping its features, and documenting what he believes are clear signs of carving. He points to straight channels that resemble drainage ditches, staircases that appear too regular to be natural, and even inscriptions etched faintly into the stone. To him, the site is evidence of a lost civilization dating back more than 10,000 years, drowned when sea levels rose at the end of the Ice Age. If true, this would push back the timeline of complex architecture by millennia, rewriting human history. Among the most intriguing features is what divers call the main terrace, a broad platform with steps leading up its sides. Nearby lies a formation some interpret as a road, others as a ceremonial plaza. One structure even looks like a giant turtle, perhaps shaped intentionally as a symbol. From above, the monument's geometry is striking: sharp 90-degree angles, flat planes, and terraces stacked like layers of a ziggurat. Even skeptics admit the site is unusual, though they see no reason to abandon geology as the explanation. For believers, however, Yonaguni is nothing less than Japan's Atlantis, a sunken reminder of a civilization erased by rising seas. What deepens the fascination is Yonaguni's proximity to myths of the Pacific. Japanese folklore speaks of the Dragon's Palace, an undersea realm of wonder where time passes differently, and of deities who rose from the sea to teach humanity. The nearby waters are also part of what some call the Dragon's Triangle, a zone akin to the Bermuda Triangle, where ships and planes are said to vanish mysteriously. To those inclined to connect myth with reality, The Yonaguni Monument is not only a geological curiosity, but a myth come to life, a place where the legends of sea gods and lost realms find a physical anchor. Imagine swimming down into those waters. The current tugs at your fins, the light filters through in shimmering beams, and then suddenly the monument appears. You find yourself gliding along a wall so flat it feels carved by hand, turning a corner so sharp it resembles a street. Steps rise beside you, each one broad and even, leading upward to nowhere. Fish drift lazily past, indifferent to the shapes that stun human eyes. You reach a terrace and pause, suspended in silence, gazing at an expanse of stone that feels more like architecture than accident. In that moment, the boundary between natural and man-made blurs, and you are left with a question that has no easy answer. If Yonaguni is indeed artificial, it raises profound implications. Who built it, and when? 10,000 years ago, according to Kimura, Japan's known cultures were small bands of hunter-gatherers. No evidence suggests they possessed the ability to quarry, carve, and organize such monumental architecture. If they did, then history as we know it is incomplete. If they did not, then perhaps the monument is a relic of an earlier, unknown people, erased not only from memory, but from the archaeological record itself. And if no people on Earth could have built it, some suggest, perhaps the builders were not entirely of this world. Such speculations, while unprovable, find fertile ground in the imaginations of those who see Yonaguni as proof of ancient visitors from the stars. Skeptics, however, remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. The monument, they argue, has produced no artifacts, no tools, no pottery, no bones, no indisputable signs of human activity. Without such finds, the site remains geology, no matter how suggestive its shapes. Yet this absence itself becomes part of the mystery. Perhaps artifacts lie buried under layers of silt, waiting to be discovered. Perhaps the sea has hidden them too well. Until thorough excavations are carried out, a difficult task at such depths and currents, the question will remain suspended, like a diver hovering between surfaces. Whether natural or human-made, the Yonaguni Monument holds a power that goes beyond science. It is the power of wonder. It reminds us that the earth can still surprise, that beneath familiar waters may lie shapes that unsettle our understanding of time and culture. It invites us to imagine civilizations erased, myths that may hold kernels of truth, and the possibility that history is larger than we think. For divers who visit, the monument is not just stone. It is an experience, a moment of awe when the ocean reveals something vast and silent, something that feels alive with memory. Tonight, as the tide washes against Yonaguni's shores, the monument waits in the dark, its terraces cloaked in coral, its steps patrolled by fish. Whether carved by nature or by hands long forgotten, it remains a riddle written in stone beneath the sea. And like all good riddles, its answer may never be final. That, perhaps, is its greatest gift, a reminder that mystery endures, inviting us to dream of worlds that may have been, worlds that still whisper beneath the waves. Across the vast Pacific Ocean, off the coast of Japan, lies a stretch of sea that has long carried a reputation as unsettling as its counterpart in the Atlantic. Mariners call it the Dragon's Triangle, though some prefer the more ominous Devil's Sea. Its boundaries are loosely drawn between Japan, Taiwan, and the northern Philippines, forming a wide expanse where strange stories have accumulated for centuries. Like the Bermuda Triangle, it is a place where ships are said to vanish, where compasses falter, and where the sea itself seems to hide secrets too great for the surface to reveal. Myths here stretch back long before modern tales of disappearances, rooted in Japanese folklore of dragons, spirits, and realms beneath the waves. The Dragon's Triangle owes part of its name to ancient beliefs. In Japanese myth, dragons are not merely monsters of destruction, but beings of immense power who dwell in the depths of the ocean. They are keepers of treasure, rulers of storms, guardians of gateways to other realms. Sailors believed that these dragons could rise from the waves without warning, capsizing vessels, devouring men, or dragging entire fleets into their palaces below. Such imagery may sound fanciful today, but to those who braved the sea in fragile wooden ships, it captured something real. The sudden, terrifying violence of typhoons, whirlpools, and volcanic eruptions. The dragon was a face given to the raw, unpredictable power of the Pacific. Yet legends alone do not explain the triangle's darker reputation. In modern times, reports of vanishing ships and aircraft have fed the mystery. During the 1950s, Japan reportedly lost several military vessels in the region, with hundreds of sailors never found. Fishing boats disappeared without trace, their nets and gear later discovered drifting aimlessly. Some accounts describe compasses spinning, radios failing, and lights seen flickering beneath the water's surface. Skeptics suggest these are the results of strong currents, volcanic activity from the Izu-Bonin-Mariana Arc, or human error magnified by dangerous conditions. But believers see patterns that suggest something more, a hidden force, perhaps ancient, that continues to assert itself in these waters. The comparison to the Bermuda Triangle is inevitable. Both regions occupy vast stretches of ocean near major currents. Both are associated with magnetic anomalies and sudden storms. Both are embedded with folklore that predates modern reports. And in both, rumors of structures beneath the sea deepen the mystery. Some claim that pyramids or megaliths lie hidden in the Dragon's Triangle, relics of a lost civilization drowned long ago. If so, these ruins might be connected to sites like Yonaguni, only a short distance away. The idea of a sunken realm spanning the Pacific is not new. Myths of Mu or Lemuria have long imagined a great continent that once stretched across these waters before vanishing beneath the waves. The Dragon's Triangle becomes, in this view, not merely a dangerous sea, but a graveyard of empires. Imagine sailing into those waters on a calm day. The sky is blue, the horizon endless, the sea deceptively serene. Hours pass, and then the wind shifts, the clouds gather, and the waves rise with sudden ferocity. Instruments falter, compasses lose their bearing, and the familiar stars seem to vanish behind storm. In such moments, it is easy to understand why sailors once believed dragons lurked below, coiling through the depths, stirring tempests with their tails. And if one could dive beneath those storm-tossed waves, perhaps one would glimpse more than darkness, perhaps terraces of stone, plazas long abandoned, fragments of a city swallowed by the Pacific, waiting silently as the ocean reclaims its dominion. For the Japanese, the sea has always been both sustainer and destroyer. It brings fish, trade, and travel, but it also delivers tsunamis, storms, and quakes. The story of the Dragon's Triangle reflects this duality. It is a myth that preserves the memory of disaster, whether volcanic eruptions, submarine earthquakes, or typhoons that rise with little warning. Yet the myth also opens the door to speculation. Could it be that beneath these waters lie ruins older than recorded history, monuments built by hands we no longer remember? The triangle becomes a liminal space, not just a region of ocean, but a threshold between what is known and what is forgotten. Modern science offers explanations for many of the triangle's mysteries. Submarine volcanoes release gas that can reduce buoyancy, causing ships to sink without warning. Strong undersea currents can drag vessels off course. Electronic anomalies can arise from natural variations in the Earth's magnetic field. These are rational answers, and yet they do not erase the allure of the legend. The Dragon's Triangle, like its Atlantic twin, resists final definition because it exists as much in imagination as in geography. To chart it on a map is easy. To chart it in the human mind is far more complicated. And so, the Dragon's Triangle continues to live in two worlds. In one, it is a region of treacherous seas where geology and weather conspire against sailors. In the other, it is a gateway to mystery, a place where dragons dwell, where ships vanish into hidden palaces, where the ruins of forgotten civilizations lie cloaked in silence. These two worlds overlap in the restless waters off Japan, and those who pass through carry with them both caution and wonder. Some dismiss the stories as superstition, others cling to them as fragments of truth. But all who know the name feel its weight, for it reminds us that the ocean is not tame, and that beneath its surface lie riddles that may never be solved. Tonight, as waves break against Yonaguni and winds sweep the Pacific, the Dragon's Triangle waits. It is both a place on the map and a place in the mind, both storm and story, both danger and dream. To enter its waters is to confront not only the might of the sea, but also the pull of imagination. The sense that somewhere below, dragons may still stir, and cities may still sleep, unseen, at the bottom of the world. In the winter of 1803, along the eastern shores of Japan, villagers in the Hitachi province gathered at the beach to witness a strange object drifting toward land. The sea that morning was gray and restless, the waves carrying with them something that looked nothing like the usual wreckage of fishing boats. As it came closer, the crowd saw a vessel unlike any they had ever known. It was round, almost like a pot or bowl turned upside down, and its surface gleamed with a metallic sheen. The top was capped with glass or crystal panels, through which light seemed to filter. The villagers called it Utsuro Bune, the hollow ship. Its story, preserved in records and illustrations from the period, remains one of the most enigmatic encounters in Japanese folklore, blurring the line between legend, rumor, and what some today might call an early close encounter. Accounts describe the vessel as about 12 feet high and nearly 18 feet wide, large enough to hold a passenger, but small compared to ocean-going ships of the era. The lower portion was made of metal plates, riveted together in a way unfamiliar to the villagers, while the upper section appeared to be lined with windows. No sail, mast, or rudder was visible. Instead, it drifted aimlessly, as though carried by currents rather than steered by hand. The people, wary but curious, pulled it onto the beach and peered inside. What they found has fueled speculation for centuries. Within the hollow craft sat a young woman. She appeared to be in her 20s, with pale skin and red hair, dressed in garments made of fine cloth embroidered with unknown symbols. She clutched a small box to her chest, refusing to let it go, no matter how the villagers pleaded. She spoke in a language they could not understand, her words flowing in tones foreign to their ears. Some accounts say her hair and eyebrows were tinted red, unusual for Japan at the time, and that her features did not resemble those of the local population. To the villagers, she seemed otherworldly, not necessarily divine, but certainly not ordinary. The box she carried became an object of deep suspicion, for she guarded it fiercely, never allowing anyone to touch or open it. The villagers debated what to do. Some believed she was a foreign princess, cast adrift from a distant land. Others whispered that she was a celestial being, a messenger from the sea gods. A few feared she was an omen, her box containing something dangerous. The records differ on what happened next, but many claim that the villagers, unsettled by the strangeness, pushed the vessel back into the sea, letting it drift once more into the unknown. The woman and her hollow ship vanished over the horizon, never to be seen again. What remained were the drawings, carefully preserved in scrolls, showing the round craft, the windows, and the mysterious passenger holding her box. Modern interpretations of the Utsuro-bune story vary widely. Some scholars see it as folklore, shaped by Japan's isolationist era. In the early 1800s, Japan had limited contact with foreigners, and stories of strange visitors fed both fear and curiosity. The woman could have been a castaway from Russia or another nearby region, her language and appearance unfamiliar to the Japanese villagers. The vessel might have been an experimental craft, or a modified ship's boat, its unusual design exaggerated by imagination. The box could have contained nothing more than personal belongings, treasured by a woman alone in a strange land. In this view, the tale is a human story, not a supernatural one. Yet others see in the Utsuro-bune account something far stranger. To them, the round, metallic vessel with glass windows resembles not a boat, but what we would today call a capsule or craft. The woman's guarded box becomes a symbol of hidden technology or knowledge, something too advanced for the villagers to comprehend. The entire episode, reinterpreted through modern eyes, begins to look uncannily like an encounter with beings from beyond Earth. The idea may stretch the imagination, but the details, the shape of the vessel, the foreign appearance of the passenger, the insistence on protecting an unknown object, fuel endless speculation. Regardless of interpretation, the story reveals something profound about the human relationship with mystery. The villagers saw, touched, and debated, but in the end, they let the ship go, unable to reconcile what it meant. Their decision preserved the enigma rather than solved it, leaving future generations to wonder. In this, the Utsuro-bune mirrors the larger theme of lost civilizations and drowned monuments. Just as the sea hides ruins that could alter our history, so too does it carry stories that resist easy explanation. The hollow ship is both artifact and allegory, both physical sighting and symbolic tale. Imagine standing on that beach in 1803, watching the vessel glint in the pale winter light. The villagers murmur around you, torn between fear and awe. The woman inside looks out, her eyes filled with meaning you cannot decipher, her voice flowing in words that fall like rain on stone. She clutches her box as though it contains her very soul. You reach out, But she shakes her head, and the moment lingers in silence. Then, with a collective decision, the people push the craft back to the sea. It bobs on the waves, drifts outward, and slowly disappears into mist. You are left staring at the horizon, wondering if you have just witnessed a fragment of a story larger than your own world. Today, the tale of Utsurobune continues to fascinate because it captures the essence of mystery itself. It is neither fully believable nor easily dismissed. It exists in the gray space between myth and memory, where detail is too sharp to ignore, yet too strange to accept. Whether castaway or celestial visitor, the woman in the hollow ship reminds us that the sea has always been a stage for encounters with the unknown. Beneath its surface and across its waves, it carries not only wreckage but wonders, not only loss but possibility. And perhaps somewhere out there, the Utsurobune still drifts, a silent vessel carrying secrets the world has yet to learn. Scattered across the soil of Japan, unearthed from fields and ancient burial sites, lie small figures that have puzzled archaeologists for more than a century. They are called dog, clay figurines crafted during the Jomon period, a time stretching from about 14,000 BCE to 300 BCE. The Jomon people were hunter-gatherers and early farmers, skilled at pottery, fishing, and living in harmony with the forested islands they called home. Yet among their many artifacts, the Dogu stand apart, not only for their odd appearance but for the questions they inspire. Some resemble humans, yet their shapes are distorted, their features enlarged, their eyes covered by what looks uncannily like goggles. To hold one is to feel both the intimacy of handmade clay and the strangeness of something not quite of this world. The dog are small, usually no taller than a foot, and each one is unique. Some have wide hips and narrow shoulders, others are squat and round, while a few stretch tall and angular. Their surfaces are decorated with intricate patterns, spirals and lines etched with care. Most remarkable are their faces. The eyes are huge, often almond-shaped or circular, dominating the head. Around them, ridges and marks suggest lenses or visors. To modern observers, they look oddly like helmets, as though the figures were dressed for travel through another environment. Their bodies, too, sometimes appear armored, with segmented limbs and joints. The resemblance to suits, protective gear of some kind, is striking, even if accidental. Archaeologists offer many interpretations. Some suggest the Dogu represent fertility, their exaggerated hips and breasts symbolizing abundance and childbirth. Others think they were used in rituals of healing, with cracks intentionally made and then repaired as a form of sympathetic magic, transferring illness from a person to the figurine. Still others propose they are guardians or gods, small effigies meant to protect households or villages. Within the framework of anthropology, the dog fit comfortably as expressions of culture, belief, and daily life. And yet, outside that framework, another interpretation persists, that these figurines are depictions of beings the Jomon encountered, beings who wore garments unlike any known at the time. This idea, though controversial, has gained a following among those who see in the dog not symbols, but memories. To them, the goggles are not artistic flourishes, but visors. The segmented limbs are not abstractions, but suits of technology. The strange proportions, large heads, small bodies, resemble descriptions of beings from beyond the earth. Could it be, they ask, that the Jomon saw visitors from the sky and recorded their presence in clay? Could the dog be among the earliest artistic testaments to encounters with something other than ourselves? Mainstream scholars dismiss this as speculation, yet the imagery continues to resonate. It is difficult to look at a dog and not sense the otherworldly in its form. The mystery deepens when compared to figures from other cultures. In the deserts of the American Southwest, the Hopi people crafted kachina dolls, representing spiritual beings who came to teach and guide. These dolls, too, often wear masks or helmets, their forms elongated and strange. In Mesopotamia, ancient cylinder seals depict winged beings descending from the sky, their attire sometimes resembling layered garments or suits. Across continents, separated by oceans and millennia, humans carved images of figures that seem both human and beyond human. The similarities may be coincidence, a shared impulse to personify the mysterious, or they may hint at a deeper story, fragments of memory passed down in clay and stone. Imagine a Jomon potter shaping a dog thousands of years ago. The firelight flickers against the walls of a simple dwelling, smoke rising from the hearth. With steady hands, the artisan presses clay into form, etching lines with a stick, pressing circles for eyes. Perhaps the figure represents a goddess of fertility, a plea for safe childbirth. Perhaps it embodies illness, soon to be broken and buried to heal someone dear. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it recalls a figure seen in dreams or visions, clad in something beyond comprehension, a visitor whose presence left too deep an impression to ignore. The clay hardens, the figurine survives, and millennia later we hold it, wondering what truth its maker intended. The dogu remind us of the complexity of human imagination. They demonstrate how symbolism and memory intertwine, how art can hold multiple meanings at once. They also remind us of how fragile our understanding of the past is. Without written records, we interpret through fragments, clay, bone, stone, charred remains of fires. Into those fragments, we project our own questions, hopes, and fears. The dog become mirrors as much as artifacts, reflecting not only the Jomon but ourselves, our hunger to know if we are alone or part of something greater. Today, many dog rest in museums, their forms illuminated behind glass. Visitors lean close, studying the enormous eyes, the strange helmets, the patterned bodies. Some smile, imagining them as ancient toys or charms. Others frown, unsettled by their alien quality. Children press their faces to the glass, whispering that the figures look like astronauts. In that whisper lies the enduring power of the dog. Whether they represent gods, guardians, or something stranger, they still spark wonder. They still speak across 12,000 years, carrying with them the voice of a people long gone, preserved in the simple, enduring language of clay. Tonight, as the wind sweeps across the Japanese islands and the sea murmurs against the shore, the dog rests silent in the earth and in museums. Their meaning is uncertain, their origins debated, their forms enigmatic. Yet in their strangeness lies their gift. They remind us that history is not a closed book, but a living mystery, full of questions waiting in shards of pottery and fragments of story. They invite us to imagine possibilities beyond the obvious, to look at the past not as static, but as alive with wonder. And perhaps, in their wide eyes, we see not only the vision of the Jomon, but also our own reflection, still searching the skies and seas for visitors, still shaping clay into stories of the unknown. In the vast expanse of the Sahara Desert, where dunes roll like waves of stone and the horizon shimmers with heat. The silence is immense. It is easy to forget that this arid wilderness was once alive with rivers, grasslands, and herds of animals. Thousands of years ago, before the desert spread its cloak of sand, people lived here, hunted here, and painted their world upon the walls of caves. These paintings, preserved in the dry air, remain as windows into a forgotten landscape. They show not only animals long vanished from the region, but also figures that raise questions reaching far beyond the desert itself. The caves of Tassili Najjar in Algeria are among the most famous. Here, on walls of rock, artists painted scenes of daily life more than 6,000 years ago. Hunters chase antelope, women dance in circles, cattle graze in green fields. These images remind us that the Sahara was once fertile, a land of lakes and rivers where communities thrived. But among the familiar scenes are figures that seem strange, almost out of place. They are tall, with rounded heads, elongated bodies, and eyes so large they dominate the face. Some appear to wear helmets, others suits that cover their entire form. One particular painting, often called the Great Martian God, depicts a towering figure with a bulbous head and outstretched arms, surrounded by smaller human shapes, as if in reverence. Archaeologists explain these figures as shamans, their unusual appearance representing trance states, masks, or symbolic attire. Ritual art often distorts reality to express visions, they argue, and the Sahara paintings fit that tradition. Yet to others, the resemblance to beings from beyond the earth is too striking to ignore. The rounded helmets, the visors, the fully covered bodies. These details look uncannily like depictions of astronauts drawn thousands of years before spaceflight. Were these merely imaginative symbols, or could they be memories of encounters with beings the artists did not fully understand? The debate is further fueled by the context. These paintings are not isolated. They are part of a vast collection of thousands of images covering caves and rock shelters across the desert. They record centuries of life, shifting climates, and cultural change. Within that vast canvas, the presence of a few strange figures suggests something significant to the people who painted them. If they were shamans, why portray them with such alien features? If they were spirits, why clothe them in what appears to be gear or suits? The ambiguity invites interpretation, and in that ambiguity, mystery thrives. Imagine standing inside one of those caves as the last light of day fades outside. The walls glow with ochre, red, and white figures, animals frozen mid-stride, dancers forever circling. And then, in the midst of this familiar world, you see the towering form of the great Martian god. Its presence is commanding, its shape unlike any human you know. For the ancient artists, this figure must have carried immense significance, worthy of preservation alongside the daily rhythms of life. Was it a vision from dreams, a memory of ritual, or a record of something more tangible? The silence of the cave offers no answer, only the haunting echo of eyes that seem to stare back across time. Comparisons have been made to other ancient art around the world. In Val Camonica, Italy, rock carvings show figures with what look like helmets and antennae. In Australia, Aboriginal paintings depict the Wangina, sky beings with large round heads and dark eyes, said to have come from above to teach humanity. In the Americas, petroglyphs sometimes show figures surrounded by rays or beams. Across continents, cultures far apart produced images that some interpret as visitors from the stars. Skeptics argue these are coincidences, products of similar human imagination. Believers see them as consistent testimony, fragments of a global story whispered through art. What gives the Sahara paintings particular weight is their setting. The desert itself is a symbol of transformation, once green, now barren, once fertile, now desolate. The art captures that shift, preserving the memory of animals and rivers that no longer exist. If the artists also preserved encounters with strange beings, then the paintings serve as a double record of climate change and of contact, of earthly loss and cosmic connection. The desert winds whisper both truths, carrying sand across images that remain stubbornly visible despite the passage of millennia. Today, the Tassili Najar Caves are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected for their immense cultural value. Visitors who make the journey across the desert still stand in awe before the paintings, their colors faded, but their forms unmistakable. Guides recount the legends of the Tuareg, the desert people who see the figures as ancestors or spirits. Scholars measure, catalog, and debate. And dreamers imagine spacecraft, visitors, and lost civilizations. Each perspective sees something different, but all agree on one point. The art is extraordinary, a testament to creativity and mystery intertwined. As night falls in the Sahara, the desert grows cold, the stars blazing overhead with a clarity unknown in cities. To lie beneath that sky is to feel both small and infinite, to sense the same awe that might have inspired the ancient artists. Perhaps they painted what they saw in visions under those very stars. Perhaps they painted memories of encounters that defy our categories of myth and history. Either way, the figures remain, watching us as we watch them, bridging a gulf of 6,000 years with their silent gaze. The Sahara cave paintings remind us that art is more than decoration. It is memory, imagination, and testimony all at once. It can preserve the shape of animals long extinct, the rhythm of rituals long forgotten, and perhaps even encounters too strange to explain. Whether the great Martian god was a shaman in trance, a spirit from myth, or a visitor from the skies, its image endures. And in that endurance lies its power to make us question, to make us wonder, to remind us that the past is as mysterious as the future we have yet to face. Along the western coast of India, where the Arabian Sea meets the state of Gujarat, the waves conceal a story that has unsettled historians for decades. Beneath the waters of the Gulf of Cambay, also known as Kambat, sonar surveys at the turn of the 21st century revealed something astonishing. Vast geometric patterns on the seabed, stretching across miles. For a moment, it seemed as though the ocean itself had peeled back a layer of time, exposing the outline of a city far older than any recorded in South Asia. The discovery drew comparisons to Atlantis, not only for its scale, but for the unsettling possibility that it belonged to a civilization erased long before history began. The first surveys were carried out by India's National Institute of Ocean Technology around 2001. Using side-scan sonar, researchers mapped the seafloor and found rectilinear structures, straight lines, squares, and grids suggestive of streets, foundations, and walls. In an environment where natural formations are usually chaotic and uneven, the geometry stood out. The area covered nearly 5 square miles, larger than many ancient cities. Divers who explored the site reported retrieving artifacts buried in the silt, beads, pottery fragments, and even tools. Some of these finds were carbon dated to as much as 9,000 years ago, pushing the timeline of urban life in India back thousands of years beyond the Indus Valley civilization, long considered the region's cradle of complex society. If these dates are correct, the implications are staggering. It would mean that while much of the world still lived in small farming villages or as hunter-gatherers, a sophisticated culture was building cities along India's coast. Such a revelation would rewrite not only Indian history, but human history, suggesting that complex civilization arose earlier and more widely than we believed. Yet controversy soon followed. Some scientists questioned the reliability of the carbon dates, arguing that materials retrieved from the seabed could have been transported from elsewhere. Others doubted whether the geometric patterns truly represented man-made structures, proposing instead that they were natural formations shaped by currents and erosion. The debate remains unresolved, leaving the Gulf of Cambay caught between revelation and skepticism. Still, the idea of a sunken Indian city resonates deeply with the region's mythology. Ancient Hindu texts speak of Dwarka, a city founded by Krishna, the god-king, which was swallowed by the sea after his death. In the Mahabharata and the Puranas, Dwarka is described as a dazzling city of palaces, streets, and temples, glowing with jewels and bustling with life. When Krishna departed, the ocean rose and reclaimed it, leaving only legend behind. To believers, the discoveries in Cambay are not chance geology, but confirmation of these ancient stories. What was once myth may have been memory, preserved in sacred text until science caught up with its evidence. Imagine diving into those waters. The visibility is poor, the currents strong, the silt rising in clouds around you. As you move closer to the seabed, you glimpse shapes half buried, stones aligned in rows, slabs that look like steps, blocks that fit together as if once part of a wall. Your hand brushes against a bead, smooth and small, yet clearly crafted. In that moment, the weight of millennia presses close. You are not only in the sea, you are standing at the threshold of forgotten history, a place where myth and archaeology converge. The fascination with Cambay lies not only in what has been found, but in what might still lie hidden. Excavations underwater are notoriously difficult, requiring immense resources and technology. Much of the site remains unmapped, its secrets trapped under layers of silt. Each artifact recovered adds fuel to speculation. Could this be the lost Dwarka, or another city entirely, drowned when glaciers melted and seas rose at the end of the Ice Age? The parallels to other submerged sites, from Yonaguni to Cuba, deepen the sense that the ocean holds a patchwork of civilizations erased by the same global catastrophe. Perhaps these are not isolated anomalies, but chapters of a larger story, fragments of cultures connected across continents by memory of rising seas. Skeptics insist caution. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and so far the Cambay finds, though intriguing, fall short of rewriting history. Without extensive excavation and irrefutable evidence of city planning, streets, inscriptions, large-scale architecture, the discovery remains tantalizing but uncertain. Yet even uncertainty has power. It invites imagination, inspires research, and reminds us that the past is far from settled. The sands of time are not only on land, but also beneath the sea, waiting for us to look. For India, the possibility of ancient sunken cities carries cultural and spiritual weight. It connects modern people with myths their ancestors cherished, affirming that stories handed down through millennia may hold more truth than we once thought. When villagers tell of Krishna's city lying beneath the waves, they are not merely recounting legend. They are echoing an intuition that memory, myth, and history are woven together. Science may yet prove or disprove the details, but the resonance endures. A bridge between the ancient and the modern, between faith and reason. As night falls along the coast of Gujarat, fishermen launch their boats into waters that conceal more than fish and currents. Beneath them may lie streets once walked by thousands, temples where prayers were offered, and homes where families lived their lives unaware of the sea's approach. The waves lap gently now, but their silence covers a violence of the past, the sudden rise of waters, the collapse of land, the loss of everything built. And still the ocean keeps its secrets, whispering only through sonar echoes and fragments pulled from the mud. The Gulf of Cambay reminds us that the boundary between history and myth is not fixed. Sometimes what we dismiss as legend may contain grains of reality, preserved not in archives but in memory and faith. Whether or not Cambay proves to be the site of a lost civilization, it has already reshaped the way we see the past. It teaches us humility, reminding us that our timelines may be incomplete, our knowledge provisional, our history only a partial truth. The rest lies underwater, waiting. Along India's western coast, where the Arabian Sea presses against the state of Gujarat, the waves conceal one of the most sacred names in Hindu tradition, Dwarka. In Sanskrit, the word means gateway, and in legend, it was the gateway to the divine, a city founded and ruled by Krishna himself. For centuries, Dwarka was known only through scripture, described in the Mahabharata and the Puranas as a glittering metropolis of palaces, markets, and temples. It was said to be built of marble and jewels, adorned with golden towers and bustling with tens of thousands of people. But its glory was short-lived, for after Krishna departed this world, the ocean rose and swallowed the city whole. For generations, Dwarka remained a story, a vision of paradise lost to the sea. Yet in the modern era, divers exploring off the coast have reported ruins that make the legend feel less like imagination and more like memory. Marine archaeology around present-day Dwarka began in earnest in the 1980s. Beneath the waves, researchers discovered walls, pillars, and streets that appeared to form the outline of a submerged city. Stone blocks lay in orderly patterns, steps descended into the sand, and anchors carved from rock hinted at a once bustling port. Some of the structures date back more than 9,000 years, far older than the Indus Valley civilization that mainstream history calls India's first great urban culture. If these dates hold true, Dwarka may represent not only a legendary city, but also a chapter of human civilization that predates all known records. The descriptions from Hindu scripture match the findings in uncanny ways. The texts speak of a city with wide roads and public squares, surrounded by walls and gates. They describe harbors where ships from distant lands docked, markets filled with goods, and temples that glowed with devotion. The sea's eventual claim over the city is recorded as both tragedy and destiny, linked to the departure of Krishna, who returned to the heavens after his earthly mission. The archaeological evidence, docks, streets, and temples now underwater, echoes these descriptions as though the myth was not invented but remembered. Imagine walking through Dwarka in its prime. The streets are alive with merchants selling spices, fabrics, and jewels. Priests chant hymns in temples where lamps burn brightly, their flames reflected in walls of polished stone. Children chase one another through courtyards, while fishermen prepare nets for journeys across the Arabian Sea. The city glitters in sunlight, a hub of trade, devotion, and daily life. Now imagine that same city in its final days. The tide creeps higher, the sea erodes the walls, and tremors shake the ground. One morning the waves surge, and the ocean reclaims what it once allowed to rise. Families flee, temples crumble, and the city that shone like a jewel becomes a ruin beneath the water. The parallels to Atlantis are clear. Both Dwarka and Atlantis were radiant cities, both favored by the divine, both destroyed by the sea. Yet Dwarka differs in that its story comes with continuity. For the people of India, Krishna is not a distant legend but a living presence, worshipped daily in temples and homes. To them, Dwarka's submergence is not only history but also theology, a reminder of the cycle of creation and destruction that defines Hindu cosmology. The sea's power is divine power, the loss of Dwarka part of the rhythm of ages. Unlike Plato's Atlantis, used as a parable, Dwarka is woven into faith, a story not only of loss, but of devotion that continues even now. Modern archaeology has complicated the picture. Some scholars argue that the ruins offshore are not as old as claimed, suggesting they may belong to later settlements destroyed by shifting seas. Others caution against reading myth too literally, warning that confirmation bias may lead us to see in stone what Scripture describes. Yet the allure remains, for the evidence is there: anchors, pottery, and walls lying in water where no city should be. And even if Dwarka was not exactly as the Mahabharata described, the resonance between text and ruins is too powerful to dismiss. Myths, after all, often contain kernels of truth, reshaped through centuries, but still rooted in memory. The story of Dwarka also reminds us of the intimacy between human civilization and the sea. The ocean provides food, trade, and connection, yet it is never fully ours. It advances, retreats, and occasionally overwhelms. Cities built too close to its edge risk being claimed. The Jomon people of Japan, the farmers of Doggerland, the inhabitants of the Black Sea's shores, all learned this lesson. Dwarka stands as India's chapter in that larger story, a place where faith and catastrophe intertwine. To the faithful, its submergence was destiny. To archaeologists, it was geology. To us, it is both, a reminder of how fragile greatness can be. Imagine standing on the present shore of Dwarka today. Pilgrims gather at temples, offering flowers and prayers to Krishna. The waves crash against the rocks, hiding beneath them the outlines of streets and walls. Boats sway gently in the harbor, unaware that beneath their keels lie anchors once used thousands of years ago. The city still lives, in spirit and in ruins, both above and below the waterline. It is at once myth and archaeology, faith and history, a place where past and present meet in the rhythm of the tide. Tonight, as lamps are lit in Krishna's temple and chants echo across the water, the submerged city rests in silence. Fish swim through what may once have been plazas, corals grow upon temple stones, and the ocean guards its secret. Whether Dwarka was truly the city of Krishna or simply an ancient settlement lost to the sea, its story endures because it captures what all lost cities represent: the yearning to connect myth to reality, to find in stone the echoes of faith. Dwarka is more than a ruin. It is a reminder that even when cities fall, stories rise, carrying their memory across ages like waves against the shore. High in the Andes, straddling the border of Peru and Bolivia, lies a body of water so vast and so luminous it feels more like an inland sea than a lake. At over 12,000 feet above sea level, Lake Titicaca glitters under an open sky, its waters reflecting snow-capped peaks and drifting clouds. For the peoples who have lived along its shores for millennia, it is not merely a lake, but a place of origin, a sacred cradle where gods walked and civilizations began. Legends say that Viracocha, the great creator god, rose from these waters to shape the sun, the moon, and humanity itself. Archaeology, too, has found that beneath the surface of the lake lie ruins of temples, terraces, and roads, traces of cultures that flourished long before the Inca. Here, myth and history blend as seamlessly as water and sky. The importance of Lake Titicaca to Andean culture cannot be overstated. The Inca, who rose to power centuries later, claimed their first king emerged from the lake, sent by the gods to found their empire. For the Aymara people, Viracocha created the world from its depths, disappearing back into the water once his task was complete. Even today, ceremonies on the lake honor its divine role, with offerings cast into the water, flowers, coca leaves, or small figures, as gifts to the spirits that still dwell within. The sense of sanctity is not only spiritual, but tangible. To stand on the shore and gaze across the shimmering expanse is to feel the weight of stories older than memory. In the year 2000, a team of archaeologists made a discovery that seemed to confirm the lake's legendary status. Using sonar, they mapped the bottom of Titicaca and found the outlines of a large structure nearly 2,000 years old. Divers exploring the site reported walls of stone, steps leading upward, and platforms resembling ceremonial plazas. Some believe it to be a temple dedicated to Viracocha, submerged either by rising waters or by tectonic shifts. The idea that a sacred temple rests beneath the waves of an already sacred lake adds a layer of mystery that resonates far beyond the Andes. It suggests not only that myth and memory are entwined, but also that human devotion has left monuments even where nature seems inhospitable. The ruins beneath Titicaca are not isolated. Around the lake's shores stand sites like Tiwanaku, Pumapunku, and Isla del Sol, each filled with stones carved so precisely they challenge explanations. Tiwanaku, in particular, with its monumental gateway of the sun, suggests an advanced culture whose origins remain obscure. Scholars date Tiwanaku's rise to around 500 CE, but some argue that its foundations may be much older, aligned with astronomical cycles stretching back thousands of years. To imagine that these builders also raised temples now submerged in Titicaca is to imagine a culture whose reach extended from mountains to water, leaving marks that resist easy interpretation. The legends surrounding the lake speak of cities drowned long ago. Some stories tell of Wanaku, a city swallowed by the waters as punishment for its pride, echoing the familiar theme of Atlantis. Fishermen still speak of hearing bells tolling from beneath the surface, as though the drowned city has not fully vanished but continues to exist in another realm, audible in whispers when the lake is calm. These tales, whether literal memory or symbolic myth, reinforce the idea that water is both giver and taker, preserving the sacred even as it conceals it. Imagine drifting across the lake in a reed boat, the kind still made by the Uros people on floating islands woven from totora reeds. The water is deep blue, the air thin and sharp, the sun dazzling overhead. As you glide, you peer into the depths and wonder what lies below. Perhaps a plaza where worshippers once gathered, their chants rising toward snow-capped peaks. Perhaps statues of Viracocha, toppled but intact, resting in silence beneath schools of fish. Perhaps stairways leading nowhere, swallowed by water but still carrying the memory of feet that once climbed them. The lake becomes a mirror of time, reflecting not only sky, but also the forgotten worlds beneath. For archaeologists, the challenge is immense. Excavating under high-altitude waters is costly and dangerous. Visibility is poor, currents unpredictable. Much of what has been glimpsed remains tantalizing but unconfirmed. Yet even without full excavation, the weight of evidence points to a tradition of sacred architecture tied to the lake. Pottery, tools, and offerings have been dredged from its depths, suggesting rituals performed on platforms that later sank. The blending of myth and archaeology here is seamless. What the texts describe, the lake preserves, not in clarity but in suggestion, inviting us to wonder. The connection between Titicaca and Viracocha also raises broader questions. If cultures here preserved memory of a creator rising from the water, is it possible those myths echo earlier encounters? Perhaps with teachers or visitors whose presence was so striking that it was deified? Some theorists propose that Viracocha, like Poseidon of Atlantis, was not merely a god, but a memory of something real translated into myth. His association with both creation and flood, with both generosity and judgment, mirrors patterns found in other parts of the world. Perhaps he, too, is part of a larger story of civilizations touched by forces they could not fully explain. Standing today on Isla del Sol, where Inca myth says the sun was born, one can gaze across the lake and feel that myth and reality are not opposites, but companions. The stones of temples lie scattered, the waters hide secrets, the mountains rise eternal. Pilgrims climb stairways to shrines, tourists sail across floating islands, archaeologists dive into cold depths, all searching in different ways for connection with what was lost. The lake remains what it always has been, a mirror of the sacred, holding both the memory of gods and the ruins of men. Tonight, as the stars blaze over the Andes and the waters of Titicaca shimmer in moonlight, the submerged temple waits. Its stones are silent, but its presence is felt in every myth, every offering, every story told on the shore. Whether it is truly the dwelling place of Viracocha or simply the ruin of a culture long gone, it reminds us that the line between sacred story and historical truth is thin, shifting like the ripples of the lake itself. And in that shifting lies the mystery that keeps Lake Titicaca alive in both faith and imagination, a place where water holds the memory of gods. On the wind-swept plains of the Bolivian Altiplano, not far from the southern shore of Lake Titicaca, lie the ruins of Tiwanaku, a site that has stirred wonder, reverence, and debate for centuries. At nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, the air is thin, the sky brilliant, and the stones enormous. This was once the heart of a great civilization that flourished long before the rise of the Inca, a city of temples, plazas, and monuments aligned with the stars. Today, Tiwanaku stands as a riddle in stone, colossal blocks weighing hundreds of tons, carved with precision so fine that blades cannot fit between the joints. How such work was achieved by a people without the wheel or iron tools remains one of archaeology's enduring mysteries. The most iconic feature is the Gateway of the Sun, a massive monolith carved from a single block of andesite. Its surface bears intricate reliefs of deities, symbols, and celestial figures, centered on a mysterious sun god whose tears fall like rays of light. The doorway may once have been part of a larger structure, its carvings marking astronomical events. Standing before it, one feels the weight not only of stone, but of intention, as though the builders sought to inscribe eternity itself into rock. Around it lie other megaliths, toppled or broken, their sheer size a testament to an ambition that seems out of scale with the known technology of the time. Nearby lies Puma Punku, a site so enigmatic it has become the subject of endless speculation. Here, blocks of stone are cut into complex interlocking shapes, like giant three-dimensional puzzles. Some weigh more than 100 tons, yet they fit together with precision comparable to modern machining. The stone is red sandstone and gray andesite, quarried miles away and somehow transported to the site. Channels, grooves, and drill holes appear on their surfaces, as though fashioned with tools far beyond the capabilities of the era. Archaeologists explain these feats as the result of ingenuity, manpower, and patience, but others suggest that something more, knowledge or technology now lost, must have been at work. Legends of the Andes speak of giants who once walked these plains, beings of immense strength who moved stones as easily as a farmer lifts a basket. The Aymara people, descendants of Tiwanaku's builders, tell of Viracocha, the great creator god who commanded giants to shape the world before later destroying them when they turned against him. Some interpret these myths as symbolic, representing the vast effort required to build Tiwanaku. Others see in them a memory of something literal, beings larger than humans, capable of feats we cannot reproduce today. The idea may seem fanciful, yet when standing before stones that no modern crane has lifted to this altitude, the imagination cannot help but entertain the possibility. The scale of Tiwanaku suggests more than simple utility. The city was laid out with cosmological precision, its temples aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and cardinal directions. The Kalasasaya temple, for example, marks the movement of the sun across the horizon, functioning as a vast observatory. Its builders clearly possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, measuring cycles with accuracy comparable to other ancient civilizations across the globe. To imagine such knowledge blossoming in isolation is to marvel at the human mind. To imagine it inherited from an earlier, unknown culture or taught by beings remembered as gods is to step into the realm of myth. Puma Punku, in particular, feeds these myths. Its interlocking stones resemble modular construction, as though designed for assembly and disassembly. Some theorists suggest the site was a kind of machine, its blocks part of a larger mechanism or complex unknown to us. Others propose it was a ceremonial gateway, a place where people entered to commune with gods or ancestors. The precision of its cuts has even inspired speculation about lost technologies, sonic tools, forgotten alloys, or methods we have yet to rediscover. Mainstream scholars caution against such leaps, reminding us that skill, organization, and persistence can achieve wonders without invoking the impossible. Yet even they admit that Puma Punku is extraordinary, a sight that defies easy explanation. Imagine walking through Tiwanaku at its height, nearly 1,500 years ago. The plaza is filled with people in ceremonial dress, their chants echoing against stone walls. Priests observe the sky, marking the position of the sun as it rises between carved pillars. Smoke rises from offerings, mingling with the thin mountain air. Colossal statues, carved with angular faces and geometric designs, gaze down upon the gathering. Behind it all looms Puma Punku, its terraces gleaming in the sun, its stones so precise they seem alive with hidden meaning. The city thrums with energy, its purpose as much spiritual as practical, its ambition nothing less than communion with the cosmos. When the Tiwanaku culture declined around 1000 CE, its monuments remained, weathered by centuries but still defiant against time. The Incas later regarded the site with awe, believing it to be the work of the gods themselves. Spanish chroniclers, arriving in the 16th century, echoed that wonder, unable to imagine how mere humans could have built such monuments. Their writings helped spread Tiwanaku's fame, transforming it into a symbol of lost knowledge and forgotten power. Today, it draws not only archaeologists but pilgrims, tourists, and seekers who come to stand in the shadow of its stones and feel the hum of its enigma. The giants of Tiwanaku live not only in myth, but in the stones themselves. Whether they were literal beings of great stature or metaphors for human ambition, they represent the scale of effort required to shape such a city. The ruins invite us to imagine a time when humans dreamed on a scale so vast it seemed superhuman. They also remind us of fragility. For all their might, the Tiwanaku vanished, their culture swallowed by time, their secrets half buried in the high plains. The stones endure, but their meaning is scattered, like echoes fading in the thin air. Tonight, as stars blaze above the Altiplano and the cold wind whistles through the ruins, Tiwanaku waits. Its gateways and blocks stand silent, their weight pressing not only upon the earth, but upon the imagination. Giants may or may not have walked here, but in the presence of these stones, one feels the presence of something immense, a scale of vision that reaches beyond ordinary human limits. Whether born of gods, giants, or the genius of forgotten engineers, Tiwanaku endures as a monument to mystery, a city that whispers of powers and peoples we may never fully understand. On the windswept high plains of Bolivia, just a short distance from Tiwanaku, lies a ruin unlike any other. It is called Puma Punku, the gateway of the Puma, and for centuries it has stirred awe and disbelief in equal measure. Even in its broken state, scattered across the earth like the bones of a fallen giant, Puma Punku radiates a sense of impossibility. Its stones are not only massive, but carved with a precision that seems to mock the limits of ancient tools. To walk among them is to feel both the greatness of human ambition and the weight of mystery pressing in from every side. The site consists of huge terraces, platforms, and blocks of red sandstone and gray andesite. Some stones weigh more than 130 tons, quarried from miles away and transported somehow to this spot, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. Others are smaller, but intricately shaped, cut into interlocking H patterns, grooves, and slots so exact that they resemble pieces of a monumental machine. When viewed up close, The stones reveal sharp right angles, flat planes, and drill holes that seem to demand explanations beyond simple chisels and hammers. Archaeologists maintain that the builders of Puma Punku were ingenious stoneworkers, capable of feats that, though difficult, were not impossible. Yet even the most cautious scholars admit that the site's craftsmanship remains extraordinary, its methods not fully understood. Legends of the Aymara people, whose ancestors lived in the region, speak of gods and giants who shaped the world. According to myth, Viracocha, the great creator, commanded beings of immense size to move stones and raise temples. When these giants disobeyed, he destroyed them, leaving their work unfinished. Puma Punku, in this interpretation, is the shattered workshop of those beings, a place where divine plans were abandoned mid-construction. The story captures the strangeness of the site. Its stones appear both purposeful and incomplete, as though someone began building something immense, but never finished, leaving behind fragments that defy comprehension. The Spanish chroniclers who arrived in the 16th century were equally baffled. They described Puma Punku with reverence, calling it the work of beings beyond ordinary humans. The precision of the cuts, they wrote, surpassed even the finest masonry of Europe. Some stones were so large that even with all the power of modern machinery, lifting them to this altitude would be a formidable task. How, then, did ancient builders accomplish such feats? Ropes and manpower? Levers and ramps? Or did they possess techniques now lost to history, fragments of knowledge erased along with their civilization? Speculation has filled the gaps left by archaeology. Some suggest that the stones were softened with unknown chemicals, allowing them to be molded like clay before hardening again. Others propose sonic technology, vibrations that fractured rock with incredible accuracy. Fringe theories even imagine extraterrestrial visitors guiding the builders, their advanced tools preserved in legend as the work of gods. While mainstream science dismisses such claims, they persist because Puma Punku does not fit neatly into the timeline of human development. It is too advanced, too enigmatic, a puzzle that invites answers beyond the ordinary. Imagine standing at Puma Punku in its prime. The terraces are intact, the blocks aligned into walls that gleam in the thin sunlight. Priests ascend steps carved with precision, their chants echoing across the plain. Pilgrims gather in plazas, their offerings laid at the feet of statues now lost. Perhaps the H-shaped blocks, interlocked into structures of startling design, functioning as part of temples or ceremonial gateways. Perhaps water flowed through channels carved with geometric exactness, used for rituals or symbolism. The site pulses with energy, its stones not static, but alive with purpose. To witness it then would be to see not ruins, but a living city, one that reached for the eternal through its mastery of stone. Now imagine it as it appears today. The stones lie scattered, toppled by earthquakes, abandoned by time. Some are half buried in soil, others cracked and weathered, their edges still sharp despite centuries of exposure. Tourists walk among them, measuring grooves with their fingers, marveling at the precision. Archaeologists record dimensions, sketch diagrams, and debate functions. Yet the silence of the site overwhelms all explanations. Puma Punku remains broken, a riddle frozen in stone, its answers scattered like the blocks themselves. The brokenness of Puma Punku is part of its power. It reminds us that civilizations, no matter how ambitious, are vulnerable to nature's forces. Earthquakes, droughts, and shifts in climate can topple empires as easily as they topple walls. The Tiwanaku culture, of which Pumapunku was a part, collapsed around 1000 CE, leaving behind ruins that the Inca later revered as the work of gods. The stones outlasted their builders, but their meaning did not. Today we can measure them, admire them, and speculate about them, but we cannot fully understand them. They remain silent, carrying secrets too heavy for time to lift. For some, Pumapunku is evidence of a lost chapter in human history, a civilization more advanced than we acknowledge. For others, it is proof of humanity's capacity for genius, even with simple tools. For all, it is a place of wonder, where the line between history and myth is blurred by the sheer impossibility of its stones. To stand among them is to feel humbled, reminded that our ancestors were not primitive, but capable of feats that still challenge us today. Tonight, as the wind sweeps across the Altiplano and stars blaze above the ruins, Pumapunku rests. Its stones, broken and scattered, still hold the memory of a dream too vast to vanish. Whether built by gods, giants, or forgotten engineers, it remains what it has always been. A gateway, not to a physical city now gone, but to mystery itself. The human impulse to reach beyond limits, to carve eternity into stone, and to leave behind questions that outlive their answers. The story began with Plato, who described an island empire shining with wealth and order, then swallowed in a single night. For more than 2,000 years, Atlantis has remained the most enduring of all lost worlds, a name that stirs wonder in children and scholars alike. It has been mapped onto countless places: the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, even Antarctica. Each generation reshapes the legend, projecting its own hopes, fears, and discoveries upon it. And yet, beneath the layers of speculation, one truth remains. Atlantis is not only a place on a map, but a mirror held to humanity itself. To reimagine Atlantis is to gather fragments scattered across the globe. We have walked the submerged streets of Dwarka and Cambay in India, where myth and archaeology entwine. We have gazed at the ruins of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku in the Andes, where stones defy explanation. We have swum along the terraces of Yonaguni in Japan and drifted above the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, where geology and imagination blur. We have stood in caves of the Sahara, face to face with beings painted thousands of years ago, and held the clay dog of Japan, whose wide eyes still unsettle. Each of these is not Atlantis alone, but together they form a chorus of lost worlds, echoes of memory, caution, and wonder that transcend a single location. Atlantis, then, may not be one city or island, but a symbol of many. It represents every civilization that rose and fell, every culture erased by flood, fire, or time. It is Doggerland swallowed by the North Sea. It is the drowned temples of Lake Titicaca. It is the vanished harbors of ancient seafarers. It is humanity's shared memory of loss, dressed in myth to preserve what history forgot. When we speak of Atlantis, we are speaking not only of Plato's parable, but of the universal truth that no city, no matter how splendid, is beyond destruction. And yet Atlantis is also aspiration. Plato used it as a warning against hubris, but readers since have seen in it a dream, a civilization more advanced, more harmonious, more enlightened than our own. To imagine Atlantis is to imagine possibility, that humans once knew more than we do now, that wisdom and technology may have been lost rather than slowly invented. This vision fuels theories of ancient astronauts, of forgotten sciences, of golden ages erased by catastrophe. Whether true or not, such visions reflect our longing to believe we are part of a larger story, one in which knowledge is not linear but cyclical, rising and falling with the tides of history. Picture Atlantis not as ruins beneath the sea, but as it might have been in its prime. Rings of land and water curve outward like ripples from a stone, harbors filled with ships, temples gleaming with metals unknown today. Farmers work fertile fields, scholars study the stars, priests offer prayers to gods who may be more than myth. At the center, a great temple rises, its steps leading upward toward a sanctum where knowledge and faith meet. The city hums with balance until ambition tips the scales. Expansion, conquest, and pride swell, and then the sea, in its eternal patience, claims what it once allowed. The city falls, but its story survives, carried forward like a seed through generations. In this way, Atlantis becomes more than history. It becomes prophecy. It warns that every civilization, no matter how powerful, is fragile. Rome fell, Egypt faded, Tiwanaku crumbled, and our own world, with its towers and satellites, is not immune. Rising seas, shifting climates, and restless earth remind us daily that nature has the final word. To remember Atlantis is to remember humility, to see in its fall the shadow of our own. Perhaps that is why the legend endures, not because we need proof of its existence, but because we need its lesson. And yet, hope lingers in the legend as well. If survivors of Atlantis scattered across the world, perhaps they seeded the knowledge that allowed Egypt to rise, the Maya to flourish, and cultures across the globe to master stars and stone. Perhaps we, too, are heirs to their memory, carrying fragments in myths, art, and intuition. Perhaps the greatness of Atlantis is not lost but lives within us, waiting to be remembered. To imagine Atlantis reimagined is to imagine not only what was lost, but what might still be found, not in the depths of the ocean, but in the depths of ourselves. Tonight, close your eyes and imagine the sea at dusk. The horizon glows with fading light, the waves roll steady, and beneath them lies silence. Somewhere down there, perhaps, are stones aligned like streets, temples cloaked in coral, statues staring through dark water. Or perhaps there is only sand and rock, the shapes we see reflections of our own longing. Either way, the mystery endures. Atlantis is both there and not there, both ruin and dream, both history and imagination. It is the story we tell when we look into the ocean and feel its depth, its power, its secrets. It is the name we give to the eternal truth that nothing lasts forever, except the stories we keep. And so our journey ends where it began, with a city that fell in a single night, and a legend that has never drowned. Atlantis is not only Plato's parable or a place on a map. It is a mirror of humanity, reflecting our fragility, our ambition, and our yearning for connection to something greater. Whether it lies beneath the sea or only within our minds, it reminds us that civilizations rise and fall, but imagination endures. And in that endurance, Atlantis lives on, not as ruin, but as eternal possibility.